So we continue. We've been talking a lot about this elimination concept, and I just now gave you the first time where you might have to multiply both equations at the same time. So let us do another one of those before I give you some step-by-step directions that you will always be able to use. This is definitely going to be your hardest equation yet. I'm going to start it off with a 5x plus 2y. I'm going to say that equals 38. Then we're going to follow it up with a 3x minus, and we're going to go really random, 7y. And we're going to say that that equals 31. And you're kind of stuck here. You're stuck here because the x's don't really work well together. The y's don't really work well together. And you're going to have to multiply both. So I see a positive negative relationship with the y's. So I'm going to use that as where I want to start this equation solving process. Multiplying the first one times 7, second one times 2. Why? Because that will make them both equal 14y. 35x plus 14y. And the first one, the second one, 6x minus 14y. The actual multiplication on that top row, I believe, is 266, and on the bottom one, it's 62. So the goal was, again, to make it so that you could eliminate. I'm going to add those two equations together. 41x equals 204. And divide it away. So from here, what are you really supposed to do? What's really happening in this situation as it currently exists? Well, first thing that's happened is you didn't correct me because I should have been adding, not subtracting there. So we don't have 204. We should really have a 328. That's the first piece of information. Pay attention to what you're given. But the second piece of information that you need to understand is that this is just one piece of the puzzle. This is just one part of solving. You always need to go back and figure out what is the y or what is the x, depending upon what you decided to solve for in the beginning. We know that we need to get y this time. 5 times 8 plus 2y, 38. I chose this one because I had no negatives to worry about. I can just do my normal deal and be done with it pretty quick. So the idea is, at this point, if you have two equations where the variables are clearly aligned in a way that is very organized, where the x's are on top of the other x's, the y's are on top of the other y's, then you can use elimination, period. Sometimes you're going to have to multiply both equations instead of just one. What happens if I make it look like this? Now what? Well, first thing that you would identify in this particular problem is that you don't have the x's on top of the x's. You need to rearrange it. There's going to be a major piece of information that you always need to take care of. You always need to make sure that your variables are stacked up. Because if you don't stack them, you won't be able to have things cancel out. From here, identify the pieces that you can use to get rid of it. I don't have a positive negative relationship. I don't have any matching coefficients. So I just get to choose whichever one I want. I'm going to choose the top one. I'm going to multiply it by -2. That means I'm going to be getting rid of the y. Do I have to get rid of the y? No, it's just coincidence that I did that in the other problem too. But I need to distribute that all the way through. Add straight down because the y's are going to cancel. Get a final answer that x is equal to -23. Take your answer, plug it back in, and where you choose to plug it in is your choice. I'm going to go all the way back to the very beginning because it's just an x and a y and it's regular. Final answer, y is 43. So all in all, this process isn't really that bad. We just did a 2-variable, 2-equation system using elimination, and it only took us 3 lines of paper. We were done in less than 2 minutes. And how do we do it? We used elimination. Here's some step-by-step directions on how to eliminate. Number 1, you've got to stack the variables. X is on top of X's, Y is on top of Y's. Number 2, you need to make your decision on which variable you want to eliminate. You need to look for either matching coefficients or a positive negative relationship. If neither one of those happens, just choose your whatever you feel like. Step 3, you're either going to multiply one or both equations using big brackets to match those coefficients up. And one thing that you should have noticed in that last problem is that I used a -2 and not a +2. I chose to use a -2 because I wanted to establish that positive negative relationship. The 2 things that you were looking for in number 2 are the same 2 things that you're trying to create in step 3. So you want a positive negative relationship with matching coefficients. That's how we can eliminate one of the variables. Step 4, you need to add your equations together so that you can solve for the remaining. Solve for that remaining variable should be pretty straightforward, pretty easy. If it's not, then we need to have a private conversation. Don't forget, always go back and solve for the other variable afterwards. You need to have a whole point of intersection, an x and a y, a p and a t. You need to have both variables in your final answer. So let's hit one more example problem, and then I'll turn you loose. You do have homework that will be collected. There may be a pop quiz in your future. So I hope you've been doing your due diligence and not taking a week off. That would be tragic. And I told you in advance that you were going to be held responsible for all this material. So there's a lot of videos that some of y'all need to go back and rewatch because of that statement. 5x plus 3y equals 21. 4y equals 19 plus 2x. So at this point, you need to recognize 2 things just happened. Number 1 is I distorted your picture. It's not even, the variables aren't even on the same side of the equal sign anymore. But the second thing that you need to recognize is that you have options, really. Box. You could graph these equations, you could substitute these equations, or you could eliminate. It is your choice down the road. Right now, I'm checking to make sure that you understand to eliminate. It's the only reason why you wouldn't just divide by 4 and then plug in your equations. So to eliminate, though, we need to follow our directions. Step 1, stack the variables. Since they're out of order, I need to reorganize this problem. I'm going to leave the top one the same, but I'm going to move some stuff around to make it the same, the bottom. I'm going to move this to the other side, which means it needs to be a negative 2x plus 4y equals 19. Stack the variables. Check. Step 2 said, choose a variable to eliminate. We either want to use matching coefficients. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Or I could use a positive-negative relationship. And that is possible. I'm looking at it right here. My x's. I'm going to choose to eliminate the x variable. Step 3 said, multiply one or both equations using the big brackets to gain matching coefficients. Since 2 doesn't go into 5, I'm going to have to multiply both of them. When I multiply the top one, I'm using a 2. When I multiply the bottom one, it's by a 5. That's my son Averick. He's starting to wake up. Taking a nap with me all morning. 10x plus 6y equals 42. Bottom one, negative 10x plus 20y equals 95. I pulled these numbers out of the hat. Like, it doesn't matter what the numbers actually are. The step 4 says to add your equations together and solve it for the remaining variable. 26y equals 137. And your y variable is the same thing as 137 over 26. Ugly, but right. And so your final question is, what do you do with it to finish the process? You're going to take that, you're going to plug it all the way back in. I'm choosing to use the bottom equation because the y was almost by itself. And that's a somewhat comfortable thing for me to deal with, comparatively. 4 times 137 over 26 equals 19 plus 2x. I'm going to multiply that 4 in, or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just cross reduce a little bit. Boom, bam. I'll turn this into a 2 and that into a 13. So then I notice I'm still going to have a 13 on the bottom. I'm going to do my big bracket multiplication times 13. It's going to get rid of the 13 from the bottom. Yes, I end up with bigger numbers all across the whole problem. But there's not really going to be any way around that. Hope you all have a great weekend. Peace.